Okay. Anyway, no, we can play with you later.
Right, so that was turn it on.
Yeah. Oh, right. Just while we're waiting. Yeah.
Oh, that's why it won't come on.
There's a battery in this one.
It's not charged. You put that one in the white box.
Oh, well, there's another.
He's got more. He's got more.
Facebook. Yokefolk.com. You also.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Oh, you never even did film, don't you? I think somewhere. Is it you? Are you putting this on Facebook?
I'm playing Dizzy on my little baby bus.
He's not, because he had a flat battery. But anyway, we must be getting pretty close. Right, we'll do that. We'll play with those later. Do you like the music in the background? People do remixes of the actual Disney music on the Spectrum. You can tell it's not Spectrum playing, obviously. But what's this one, Andrew? Any idea? Anybody else?
Bubble Dizzy.
Hello.
Bubble Dizzy?
You reckon Bubble Dizzy?
Bubble.
Oh, okay.
Might be wrong.
We brought a Dizzy expert with us.
Yeah,
Just to sort of
I know nothing.
We only put the music in right at the end.
Yeah.
Put the music in, master it, don't let it again. What's this one? Okay, first. Here's the ability. It's not Dizzy. It is. Oh, what's this?
Adventure. Is it the Adventure? Is it the Adventure?
It's not based on the side.
Oh, we got some in the back! Pardon? Oh,
Lyndon!
Yeah.
So which one is it?
Sheepishly staple right at the back.
Magic Land! Oh, right. I was going to give a prize for whoever gets it. Actually, sure you deserve a prize. You paid for it as well. Yeah, you don't deserve a prize, Anyway, right. Should we crack on to the next one? I don't know, we're ready to start. I'm looking for some organiser at the back to say you're on. We're on! We go. We're good. Excellent. Right, fantastic. We've got the kill the music. It was a shame. Sorry, just. Right, hang on. Pause this one.
Probably not, though. Just surprised anyone listens to this.
Alright. Where's that one going? Okay. Oh, hit the wrong button. We did it. Wrong button. This button. Right.
It's
okay.
not like you'd ever use a computer as well. Oh, thank you.
Okay, so. Hello. No? Hello.
Hello, this one works. Hello. Huh, this one now works. It just took a while to boot up. Probably powered by Windows. Right, okay. Thank you very much for everybody for joining us this afternoon to join in the celebration of 30 years of Disney. Does that make you feel old?
It does actually.
About the same age as me.
It's a long time ago.
Right. Okay, so we're going to do a presentation. I think it'll be about an hour. Yeah, there's the agenda. Let's get through the agenda.
There's us getting older.
There's us
Wow.
I'm not going to read all of it out, but basically we'll start at the beginning, growing up, going through learning computer games, about the first Disney games that we wrote and why we wrote them, then on to the arcade games, consoles, making other Disney games, trying to bring back Disney, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, and then a couple of slides at the end, and then we've got some time for a Q&A if you'd like to. Obviously we're just around for the rest of the day anyway, until 5:30. But at 4 o'clock we're going to do another presentation, time for another Dizzy. So,
Okay, so into the presentation. So I think we just said we're old, but we grew up late 60s, time man on the moon.
you recognise this computer, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah,
You have one of them in the house.
I probably had 1K of memory if you were lucky, actually. It's amazing. So, but it was a sort of techno era. Star Trek just came out, I do remember, actually.
In the 70s, though.
Okay, well, yeah, but it was the first colour. But colour TVs, it was amazing. But I have to say, we grew up in the Star Wars era. That was kind of how we grew up. So I think we were 10 or 11 or something when Star Wars came out. Still remained quite popular. Arguably more popular than Disney, but anyway. But as we went into our teenage years, it was all about computer games. So it was Pac-Man Space Invaders.
Well, for us it was.
Yeah. Okay, but they were generally around. People knew about computers, and kids decided they were the best thing for playing games on.
They also knew that computers were not going to end well.
Oh no, they're going to take over the world, obviously. And people.
But every day it seems like we're getting a little closer to that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well. But there were some people who thought the computers could do so much more than games. Although the Commodore was funny because they brought out the Commodore 64 by Commodore Business Machines. You have to remember it's business machines.
We wanted to play games on them.
Home computers.
Switch your mobiles off.
So
Actually, you using it to film.
but we were just fascinated in how they actually worked. And at that point, when you got a home computer, it was quite easy to work out because the games were quite rudimentary. Things like Pac-Man Space Invaders, you could actually try to emulate them yourself on your home computer.
So, we were fascinated by computers, initially going around our mates and playing on his dad's Apple IIe, and that's not Pac-Man, that's Taxman, completely different. No IP infringement there at all. And we wanted to get ourselves our own computer. Our older brother got a ZX81, put it under the family TV, but anybody ever tried programming a ZX81 with a paper keyboard and 1K of memory? Oh, there's somebody at the back.
I was gonna say,
There's
you've got the
another
right
one here,
room
and
for
another one here, and
people.
another one here. And he's the National ZX81 Users Club! He's got to get a prize for that. So I'm out a prize afterwards. Not very good. We learned that you needed more memory, you needed colour, and you needed a keyboard. So that's why we did a paper round. We saved up and we bought a Dragon 32 in September of 82, which did have 32K of memory, colour, keyboard. We thought it was pretty good. Unfortunately, nobody else did, so there weren't many games produced for it, but kind of a blessing because that meant we had to learn to program it ourselves. So we used the manual to kind of program the basic games that were in there and then modify them and try and do sort of little maze games and Pong and everything, very, very rudimentary. However, Computer Video Games did publish one of them, which was quite nice, paid us a tenner for it as well. Did take about 3 request letters to actually get that out of them, which is a bit of a shame. But anyway, kind of dampens the enthusiasm a little. But we did enter a computer competition once we got our BBC Micro, and we wrote a game, and we sent it into the Saturday show, which we won first prize, which is awesome. And we'll show you that in a minute.
The prize is upstairs.
Oh yeah, the prize is actually upstairs. It's the Commodore monitor, whatever that is. Right, and then we carried on to write lots more games. But I think without further ado, let's just see what we look like at age 15. If you can push the button. Volume.
There's volume over there.
Send it in either as a drawing or else as a cassette. Just remind us what sort of special things you were looking for before you made the winners.
Well, it was looking for obviously the game concept.
Right, let's meet these guys, shall we? Can we have a nice welcome, please, for our computer competition winners, Philip and Andrew Oliver from Trowbridge in Wiltshire. Where are they?
We cut him off a bit there because we want to keep this video
Which is
short.
which? I'm Philip. Andrew and Philip, all right. But the thing we ought to do really is take a look at your game in action.
Okay, so let's start a game now.
It's not the best game.
In top corner, incapable player. So I'll move the wall first. And the wall appears.
Prizes anyway, and I know that everybody will be green with envy. They got a nice computer of their own at home, so we said, why don't you choose another prize? And you decided to go for what's called a high-resolution monitor, whatever that is. Congratulations to the winners of our computer competition, the Olivers!
Yes, because programming on TVs with the RF lead and stuff will ruin your eyes. So anyway, so yeah, we started, we were school kids, and we just worked through those manuals, learning basic, and it was a sort of cottage industry. A lot of the games that were being published, it was like, we used to hear about music people who'd get a demo cassette and they'd send their cassettes off to the publishers to get your music out there. It was the same with computer games. It's like the games were coming out in cassettes in the shops, and you find that it was pretty much teenagers, older teenagers, that were writing these things, and so we put our games out and just send them off, and sometimes we'd get paid and sometimes we didn't. We'd generally get them published, but sometimes you just got paid or not, which is just one of those things. But we were school kids, and it was just so fun to go down to W.H. Smith's and Woolworths and see games on the shelves.
These were written while we were in the sixth form. Probably should have been studying. Anyway, we were studying how to code. We were learning 6402.
But yeah, we came to the end of our sixth form. Mum and Dad, who were sitting at the back, wanted us to go to university. Oh, at the front. Yeah, they wanted us to go to university. But we thought computer games were just taking off, and it's what we wanted to do. And in those days, you couldn't go to university and really study games. Strange. There was actually some computing, but it was alien to us because it was all about sort of programming databases on mainframes.
And also, it was a bit of a crime to use computing power for
games.
games.
They didn't like us. Yeah, our computer studies teacher at school always thought it was a bit weird that we kept on talking about graphics. But we did. So we wanted to try to make games, so we had an agreement to take a year out to see if we could make a living out of making games, because our mum and dad could see that we can get our games into Smiths and Woolworths. That was great. Actually making any money off them was a different thing, because we'd get pocket money at best from these things. But luckily, as we finished school, went to a computer show and met Rich and David Darling, just setting up Codemasters, and so wrote lots and lots of games for those.
But that's the next slide, don't steal mine. So, we're here to celebrate Dizzy. So where did Dizzy come from? Well, the first game we wrote for Codemasters was Super Robin Hood. We met them in September '87 at a computer show down in London, and we asked them if we wrote this game, and we just had a paper designer for Super Robin Hood. How much would you pay us if we wrote this for you? And David answered £10,000. Wow! The most we'd had up to then was about £200 for a game. Luckily we didn't say that first, obviously. Anyway, so we went home and we wrote it as quickly as possible on a Amstrad 664. It was on 23 hours a day, literally, and the only reason that last hour was not on, because every 12 hours we turn it off for half an hour just to cool down, because we thought if this machine blows up because it overheats and we've got a problem. And then we take shifts in.
Yeah, they did get really hot.
So we actually wrote that in a month because we didn't want the Darling to actually change their minds on that. And then as quickly as possible we got it back to them. It was about a month. Got it back to them and they gave us a contract and £2,000. It was an advance on royalties, it turns out. But that was actually okay. That worked out okay because the game went straight to #1, huge critical acclaim, everybody loved it, and eventually the royalties did in fact exceed £10,000. So they were good to their word. That was great. I have to say I think it's because the game was stellar. But anyway, so we immediately wanted to follow that up. It's like, this is good for school kids. So we immediately went back and started writing Ghost Hunters. Again, another sort of five weeks probably, that one. But whilst writing it, they'd already put a programmer on to making Super Robin Hood on the Spectrum, saying the Spectrum's a much big market, you should make Spectrum games yourself. And in fact, David Darling just sent us a Spectrum in the post and said, look, your next game, just do your own Spectrum version. And we're like, oh, okay, free Spectrum turned in the post, which is pretty good. And so we were programming Ghost Hunters at the time, and we thought, okay, we'll just see if we can get this Spectrum, work out how to program the Spectrum. Weren't keen on using this keyboard. How many people have used that keyboard for programming? Okay, well done. Yeah, okay. We weren't too keen on that. So anyway, we found a friend who was working at Bath University in the electronics department called David Jones, and he said that he reckoned he could make a cable to link the two together. So he did produce this cable. It's actually upstairs in the display cabinet now, and there's a picture of it here. Oh, there it is. Yes. And he put that, he gave us that, and we wrote a little piece of software that you could actually output from the Amstrad through one of the ports, I think the printer port, straight into the back of the Spectrum. So we could compile the game that we'd made for the Amstrad, change a few routines for the Spectrum, and then basically squirt it across the Spectrum, test it, then save it out from the Spectrum onto a cassette, send it off to the publishers. And we got pretty quick and pretty good at doing that. The first putting Ghost Hunters onto the Spectrum and learning the Spectrum probably took a few days.
Yeah, not too
3 or
long.
4 days or something.
It's quite similar to an Amstrad, to be fair.
Yeah, it was
just
remarkably similar. You just have to change the input and the output routines, really.
Yeah, just the colours.
Yeah, a little bit of colour clash. We were lucky actually that we'd accidentally put this border down the side, which of course on the Spectrum you don't have the width of the screen, but that was a complete coincidence, and we were using the right resolution to match the Spectrum, which it was a complete coincidence too. Just luck. Anyway, that went fantastically well, so we were able to put out Ghost Hunters. But the interesting thing is, whilst we were working on Ghost Hunters, this is sort of the second side-on action platformer, I was playing around with Panda Sprites, which is the sprite package that we were using, which is something we wrote a few years before. And I was using it to make the little running man, and he's down here in a little star, and he's only tiny. He's tiny. Anyway, I was really frustrated. I had 3 colours for his head and 3 pixels by 3 pixels. So when you're trying to put a nose on him, it's like, is he going to look like Pinocchio or he's going to look like a bulldog? I got a choice here. I can't make him look like human. Anyway, I can't remember if I did put a nose on it or not. Anyway, I was a bit frustrated that I didn't have enough graphic space. So I thought, you know what, I just wish I had a really big space for just drawing a face. So in the space I had allocated for the size of the sprite, which is only like 32 pixels high, but 28 wide or something like that, I just drew a big face and smiley, and because this has animation built in, I was able to make him smile and blink and stuff like that. I was like, hey look, it's really cool. And he did look a little bit like that, but without the arms and the feet. And I didn't have a lot of space left, so I was like, well, no space for limbs then. But if I put some little hands on and some little feet on, hang on a minute, that looks quite interesting, that looks quite nice, that kind of looks cute. It's like, oh, let's make him bob up and down just in the sprite package. Does animation. Hey, one of the things that the Panda Sprites has is an automatic rotate routine. I'm making it sound really grand. If you saw it, it didn't work that well, but they were really slow. You make half a dozen cup of coffees in the time it took to rotate the sprite. But anyway, it did. So I managed to get this little sprite rotating. And I was like, oh, that's quite cool. And because we were writing Ghost Hunters at the time, I just had to just output, and it would just plug straight in. So we had a little Dizzy running around Ghost Hunters. And it looked quite cool. Anyway, back to the day job, because that was a morning off. I shouldn't have been messing around doing that. And we carried on, we finished Ghost Hunters. But then Ghost Hunters was a huge success, and we thought, well, we wrote Grand Prix Simulator after that. That went pretty well as well, actually. But anyway, we thought we want to do another side-on action platformer, but we've done the Robin Hood, and we've done this sort of Ghost Hunters. We need another theme. We were thinking it'd be really nice to do like a fantasy world cartoon. We were really into our cartoons. So we thought, well, why don't we just come up with this kind of fantasy world, a bit like a Hobbit-y type world. Oh, wait a minute, we've got that character that we drew in Ghost Hunters. That will work quite well. We'll just put him in. And so that, in fact, is the initial starting screen of the Spectrum version of Dizzy, which we wrote in February of '88. We sent it off to Codemasters. 87. I do apologise. Please on screen. Yeah, so that was written in February of '87. Sent it off to Darlings. They actually weren't too impressed. In fact, they didn't want to publish it, and David actually wrote an article in the magazine saying how he didn't want to publish it. The only reason they wanted to publish it, or the only reason they did agree to publish it, is because Super Robin Hood had gone to #1, Ghost Hunters had gone to #1, and the highest selling game at the time, and was #1 at the time, was Grand Prix Simulator. So they didn't really want to upset us. So reluctantly, they put it in a box and sold it. They did have to put on the front, by the Oliver Twins, authors of Grand Prix Simulator, because they thought, somebody's got to sell this thing. We were happy. We asked them to put on the ultimate cartoon adventure, because we thought that was what we were trying to create. That was what we were aspiring to, and that's what we thought everybody, the audience, wanted. As for the title itself, Dizzy, well, that came from the fact that he was just rolling around all the time.
Yeah, although to be perfectly honest, I'm looking at that picture now and remembering when that picture turned up, we were like, oh no.
I don't think the artist quite got that one.
It was like...
We've had better since.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really have humans in it, and you've got these sort of two heavies.
Who are these guys? Well, I have to say, the way you gave the artist a brief back in the day was sort of a 5-minute phone call, but actually this was kind of twice or third time removed, because we told somebody at Codemasters, probably Mark Baldock, and Mark Baldock had probably phoned the artist, so it was like twice removed, phone conversations. It's kind of an egg, and it's kind of got boxing gloves and red boots, and he kind of goes around adventures in caves and stuff. Okay, I got that.
That was probably the description that came back, and these things would just go straight out without much approval.
And the first we'd see of it was when it was in W.H. Smith's, in the number 1 slot. If it wasn't in the number 1 slot, we'd make sure it was by the time we left.
Okay, so the interesting thing about Dizzy was it didn't go to number 1 slot. That was actually the interesting thing. It was the first game that didn't seem to do very well. It was in the shops. It was part of the range. We carried on and did skiing or various other things. Ski game. We did some skiing as well. Actually, they've got a scary video of me skiing upstairs. But anyway, but there was a funny thing, and that is we would drive up sometimes to see Codemasters in Southam, or Banbury and then Southam, and they used to get lots and lots of letters, like fan letters for Dizzy, sort of like Codemasters.
And always start very, very complimentary. I love your game, I've been playing it relentlessly, blah, 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 blah. And you get to the second or third paragraph, can you tell me where?
Because it's an adventure game, they were stuck, and this was before the internet, if you can believe there was such a time. And
before 08,
this is a puzzle game, and what do you do if you're completely stuck on a puzzle? We'd like to think that we made all the puzzles logical in our games, but obviously what's logical
to us
might not be logical to someone else, and you're kind of stuck. We did learn lessons over the years of how to make sure people don't get stuck in puzzle games.
What, like snorkels underwater and stuff?
Yeah, that we didn't learn from, but that's Dizzy.
We did, we learned in number 3.
Yes, yeah, number 3 fixed all the problems that we had. Over the sort of year, while we were writing other games, they just kept on getting these fan letters, and we said, you know what, people do seem to like this game. The other games have gone out and sold well, but there just seems to be lots of people who really like Dizzy. So let's do another Dizzy game, and let's try not to make those puzzles quite so obscure. So we brought out Treasure Island Dizzy with the fact that he was shipwrecked onto a sort of lonely island and has to work out the various puzzles around the island with the eventual goal that he'll get off. But we thought that Treasure Island would evoke a certain sort of like a nice thing to do, and there'd be sort of like pirate things and stuff. But actually, Treasure Islands or deserted islands are a bit deserted, and that's a bit of a shame. It did make it easier because you didn't have to animate lots of pirates and things to be around the place, and we did manage to come up with the puzzles. But as Philip has just said, we did end up with not thinking through the puzzles completely. So if you start swimming around underwater and put your snorkel down, you're dead, and we didn't have any way.
That's a life lesson there,
That is.
Don't do it.
Yeah, go into the underwater.
Find yourself 200 metres underwater, don't take the kit off.
Yeah, or go into the underwater cave and then lose
Right
it,
away.
and then say, how do I swim out the underwater cave? So anyway, so we apologise for the fact that we put 1 life, because there were certain puzzles we just couldn't work out how to get around, and we'd pretty much finished the game. These games were all written in sort of a month to 6 weeks, and it was only towards the end when we were playing it, we were going, hang on a moment, what if you do this and that? So so we learned from that, and sorry for those who also learned that horrible lesson, but we decided to...
But they didn't die from taking off their aqualung underwater.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, in real life, you only have 1 life to make the best of it. But in video games, you can have 3 lives. So, Dizzy 3. Decided to make sure. So we did draw these things out on paper, but in this one we drew it out in paper with lots of little counters, and we used to play it as a little paper game.
The original hand-drawn map is upstairs.
Yeah,
so it's the wall now.
Yeah, but it hasn't got the counters. But the counters were very important because you
Gravity. I said on the wall, not on the floor.
I know, but they could have stuck them on. Anyway, no, but the point is you can actually play these games as a sort of like little board game with all the objects on little bits of paper, and we used to sort of try and play it through quite quickly, trying to make sure that all the puzzles are interesting and they all cross over each other so that they're all linked and mean something. And we got it working pretty well, and we're pretty proud of Dizzy 3. But the other thing was to say that actually setting him on a desert island was a bit sort of bland, because we wanted to bring in characters and story and stuff like that. So give Dizzy a family that he cares about, and then he can have his girlfriend sort of stolen in a sort of typical Disney Mario sort of way.
Any video game.
Any video game. Yeah, gets a girlfriend or princess stolen. It's the usual thing. So the stories were never that deep, although I think people used to say that our stories were great, and it's like, they're pretty shallow, but it's the fact that other video games had no story at all. But we did want to bring in story and bring in colourful characters, and so we gave him family and we gave him various other.
And each
creatures.
one needed something, didn't they? They're very needy family.
Yeah, poor Dizzy. All he does is collect and forage for other people all the time. Anyway, yes, moving quickly on.
Okay, so Fantasy World Dizzy was a fantastic success. I have to say, we knew while we were making it that this was an obvious number one. I think, in fact, Codemasters even put the price up a level, knowing it was obviously going to sell. It kind of doesn't matter. And it was hugely successful. I'm very, very proud of that one. And in fact, that was the last full adventure that we wrote on the Spectrum and the Amstrad. And we think we kind of, wow, it was great. So, however, there was opportunity elsewhere, and we thought that it would be really, really fun. You saw the fact that we first got into games because of Pac-Man, and so we were always loved Pac-Man. So we thought we could do ourselves a maze game, and if we put Pac-Man into a maze game,
Dizzy.
Oh yeah.
Pac-Man was already in the maze.
If we put Dizzy into our maze game, then that should be really popular. Should work really well. And we thought maze game can't take too long to write because it's not got story and characters and stuff. So we set ourselves a mission of writing it over a weekend. So at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday, we thought we're going to write a maze game and we're going to finish it by Monday morning.
Yeah, it was our game jam, the
Yeah.
4 game jams. It was the fact that we could write it. I think we were sort of frustrated. You see other people writing games, and you're thinking you want a really good version of Pac-Man or something out there, and there have been various copies or maze games, and they were all a bit rubbish, and we were thinking, well, we could do this, it's not that difficult. We just sort of come off the back of, I don't know, something like Fantasy World going, that's quite difficult, and it only takes us 6 months, 6 weeks. So therefore, to do a maze game, we'll do it in the weekend. So it's like, how much can we do in a weekend, and we'll see where we get to.
And we pretty much finished it Monday. Probably not 9 o'clock Monday, it was probably lunchtime.
Yeah.
We did then just ask Neil Adamson, who'd been doing graphics for Dizzy for us, to just tidy up and put a front end on it and tidy up some of the graphics and do the strip down the side. Whenever it says graphics by, actually 90% of the graphics in-game was me and Andrew, because they're tiny little sprites done in Panda Sprites. It's not like that anymore.
They were generally title screen in a sidebar.
Yeah, that's kind of what he got involved in, and occasionally other little bits and pieces tidying up. Anyway, so that was Fast Food. Did phenomenally well. Everybody loved it. We thought it was pretty good actually. Pretty good earner for a weekend.
It did play nicely.
And then we started moving on to consoles, but in fact, I always wanted to sort of follow up Fast Food with sort of another sort of arcade action game. And we started working at Codemasters, which you'll see a bit more on in a minute. But I still had this other idea that I wanted to do. So I talked to one of the nice programmers, very talented programmers, and I've got to say lots of lovely stuff about him because he's sitting in the back of the room looking at me right now. So I spoke to Lyndon Sharp and said, I've got this idea for a game and I really, really want to do it, and but I can't because I'm too busy on this other one. So how's about you do it? And we split the royalties. To which Lyndon said... He said,
It probably was. That is, yeah, right.
Yeah. Anyway, he did an absolutely fantastic job of Quick Snacks, and that went on to become a 92% in Crash and a Crash Smash, and it went on to be a great game. He's really into his music as well, so he put a funny little Dizzy band on the front end, and people love that music. So did a fantastic job. So thank you very much, Lyndon. So here's a little bit of a celebration of what those games actually all looked like. I think this video does actually cover the ST and Amiga years as well.
well there.
I have to say, we've got a few other people to thank there. Magic Land and Yoke Folk, and which other ones? Fred, did you write? Spellbound. So thank you very much, Fred. You did an awesome job.
Right. I don't know why
And I think Dal's here somewhere as well. Where's Dal? Oh, there he is at the back. He's here. Fantastic Dizzy. Any others? Bubble? Magic Land. Well, mate, on the ST and Amiga. Thank you very much.
Okay, so one of the reasons that there's other people in here that write the games is because we write on the Amstrad Spectrum, and then things like the Commodore 64. We never even had a Commodore 64, but those games came out because other people, some of them in the room, would convert the games. And as you heard, Philip sort of started becoming a bit of a manager, sort of managing people to write games as well, under the Dizzy sort of game. And that's because we had been off to Las Vegas, in fact, off to America, because all these games were selling really well in Britain, and they started to get across to Europe. I do know that Dizzy was very popular in Spain, a little bit in Germany.
We recently learned that it was a kind of a #1 character game in Russia, but I don't think we got any royalties from that one.
Yeah, but you only know these things because you literally go on holiday down to Spain and you go, oh, there's a computer shop there, and you walk in and go,
I only found out the Russian one because somebody's on Facebook a few weeks ago.
Yeah, but that's because you've got the internet now and you find these things out. But in the early days, we never really knew, and we were never really told where these games were selling. So it was literally you on holiday and you go, oh, it's Dizzy though, I wonder if you get royalties off that. Anyway, probably not, to be fair. Anyway,
or unfair.
But we'd been over to America, and consoles were just coming out. Nintendo had been out for a few years when we got there, and they were selling Mario games like a really high price and doing phenomenally well. And they're great games. Not knock it, but we were saying, well, we could write games like that, and it seems a huge market. So we wanted to try to break into the American market, and the way we did this was, for us, I mean, this was part of a big Codemasters. We all went over. It was funny actually, because there was a whole load of lads with Jim Darling, their dad, went over, and when we were going into
we were some sports team or something. They didn't look at our physique, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, we were clearly a bunch of geeks wandering around, but they seemed to think that we were some sort of sports team, because we had this older manager guy with us, and then a whole load of teenage lads. Anyway.
So yes, and yes.
So we went. So we saw.
Bring them back to the plot.
Yeah. So we saw that consoles were pretty cool, and so we wanted to go straight into that. We made Fantastic Dizzy, which was actually a combination of all the Dizzy games that we'd written to then, all tried.
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, 1, 2, and 3, all bunched into one game, and launched that. And we thought it went really well, although I'm sure some of you know in the room there was various political deals with publishing on consoles without licenses, which caused a few stresses.
And it was a bit painful writing for 8 months one game.
Yeah, well,
we weren't used to that.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that the cartridge was going to be in the shops for $50, which was about
35, 40 pounds?
35, 40 pounds, and so we thought we'd better make this game pretty good. And
big and impressive.
Yeah, and whilst it was still 8-bit and it still had 4 colours in every character and all those kind of restrictions, memory had started to go up. So we did actually have a fairly decent amount of memory. We weren't stuck on 32K. So with, I don't know, 256K memory, you could do huge ventures.
It wasn't even that big.
No, but
128.
Yeah, but it seemed like massive. And so yeah, 8 months it took to sort of write that. So you were kind of half time on that, and I was full time on it, and you were managing these other games on Spectrum, like Quick Stacks, yeah.
Cool. Okay, we did go on and get a Game Players Award, which was really good. Best Graphic Adventure, which is we're very proud of.
Particularly proud because second place was Zelda. Right.
Never heard of it.
No, I don't know what happened to that one. Anyway.
Okay, yeah. So this was what I was doing. So I was kind of basically working with people like Fred and Dal and Lyndon and people like this, basically just making sure that lots of other Dizzy games continued, because Dizzy was the #1 game in the UK market at the time and doing pretty well across Europe as well. So although we were focusing on the console, we didn't want to abandon the UK home market. So working with all these guys, and particularly Big Red Software, we were able to produce another bunch of adventures and a couple more arcade games, and then finished with Crystal Kingdom Dizzy. The reason this is over here is because the Dizzy fans, of which there are lots, continue to write Dizzy games to this day in all sorts of kind of game making programs. And in fact, it's got a tab here of how many games, and I think it goes to over 200 or 300 games.
Something like that, yeah.
Have you played them all, Andrew?
No.
Andrew Joseph runs yokefolk.com. Yeah, there's a lot of Dizzy fan games out there, which is really cool. Firefly in Russian as well.
I'm letting Philip do this because he wrote this PowerPoint last night and I haven't seen some of these slides, so
Crack on.
yeah.
Yeah, so the Crystal Kingdom was the last sort of kind of official game. A little bit sad, and we obviously parted company. But a few years later, we thought there might be another opportunity.
Once upon a time, in a land not so far away, lived a family of friends called the Yokefolk. They had many excellent adventures. Excellent. I get it. Yeah, very clever. Anyway, evil wizard, jealous, spell, sleep forever, blah, 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 blah. 10 years passed, and the spell weakened enough for a great hero to awaken. His name? Dizzy, Prince of the Yokefolk.
Yeah. So
That was our picture Codemaster to do Dizzy on the PS2. They basically looked at it and said, nah, not interested.
So yeah, which was sad because we were quite enthusiastic about it.
They actually said that, in fact I've got an email from David saying he doesn't believe the PS2 will ever be mass market.
Yeah. You laugh, but we had a great deal of success on PlayStation 1. We wrote loads of games. I can't remember.
More than 10.
Yeah, it was something like 13 or 14 games on PlayStation 1. And one reason we were so successful when we set up our company writing PlayStation 1 games was because when we were going around the publishers, we heard about the new console, got the specs, talked to Sony, they sent us one and we did some demos. But the demos that we took around, all the publishers like Activision and Acclaim in the day, they just said, what does Sony think they're coming into this market for? They should stick to TVs. Nintendo and Sega, there's no way you can sort of topple them. And it's all about the content. And they've got really good content. And you can't knock the sort of Sega and Nintendo content. And they said, Sony are a manufacturer, electronic manufacturer, they won't be able to do this. But we thought it was really cool. Anyway. So we showed our demos around the places, and lots and lots of people the publishers were not excited, but what we found is the Hollywood was generally excited. So we ended up with lots of film licenses,
And toy licenses.
yeah. So we did Chicken Run and Lilo and Stitch and Little Mermaid, Action Man.
Brother.
Yeah. So it was interesting.
Right, this isn't to talk about that, this is about Dizzy.
No, but it's quite
Stay
interesting.
Stay on target.
It went very, very mass market, and we had lots of success. But we did want, whilst we were writing these big games, we thought it would be nice to go back to Dizzy.
So, back to Dizzy.
Yes,
Which is the
Go on,
point.
then.
By the way, Crystal Kingdom Dizzy. Awesome graphics. Gerard's here somewhere in the room. I
Yay!
don't know where.
He's waving.
Oh, there you are, Jared. Nice graphics, mate. Thank you. Right. Is there any other developers of Dizzy games that I've forgotten to mention here? Good, I'm covered. Right. Excellent. Moving swiftly on. In 2011, the iPhone had been out for a couple of years, and Android. And Paul Ranson, working together with Lee Christian, decided to.
It was Big Red.
Originally Big Red, but
Yeah.
not Big Red at the time they
Yeah,
wrote
no.
this. Anyway, yes, these guys basically decided that they would port Dizzy, Prince of the Yokefolk onto the smartphones. Did an amazing job. I mean, look at it; it just looks beautiful. And after they finished it, they then went to Codemasters and us and said, "Do you mind if we put this out?" So a bit of high risk route. We obviously don't mind at all. I mean, we're more than happy to see Dizzy games out. That's fantastic. Codemasters took a little bit of convincing, but eventually they agreed to it as well. And so in November 2011, Dizzy, Prince of the Yokefolk was released onto iOS and Android. Roll VT.
One for all those games console children of the 80s now, Dizzy was one of the most successful European gaming brands of its era and has been given a 21st century makeover with the launch of apps for iPhone, iPad and Android. Just like its great-granddaddy, Dizzy, Prince of the Yoke Folk, is a platform puzzler featuring the happiest, bounciest egg on the planet. Launching this weekend, the games aren't free, but they're still cheaper than the cartridge originals. And this faithfully produced homage to one of gaming's great heroes certainly doesn't disappoint.
Okay, so off the back of that, we were sort of quite enthusiastic and seeing that Codemasters were back up for sort of doing a Dizzy game. We talked to them, but it was a case of, well, there wasn't any development budget. They were kind of interested and they'd do a deal. It's all about digital distribution now, so it was kind of like, well, if you're going to do Dizzy, I don't think we're going to do a 50-50 split or something on royalties. And we were thinking, well, we were at this time Blitz Games. We had teams of people making games. Well, sadly, we don't program anymore. We have very, very clever people that work for us.
We can't do artwork like this ever.
Yeah, so, but we thought, there's a fan base of Dizzy. We've got permission to do it. Let's see if we can do a Kickstarter, because Kickstarter was all the rage back then. Still is, actually, now. It's very good. And yeah, it allows you to bring things
We'll talk about Kickstarter later.
Spectrum to the handheld, which is kind of cool. Anyway,
move it forward.
Yes. So we decided to launch a Kickstarter for Dizzy to see how much interest there was, because effectively we'd need some development money to pay a team to make a new Dizzy game. So we did a little pitch on Kickstarter. Oops.
And that's why I knew that.
I haven't seen this presentation before. But I have seen the artwork before. I recognise that, and it's very nicely put together. Well done. It was a late night for you. Anyway, yes. So we had some of our artists. We have very talented artists nowadays, putting together what they would realise the characters now, and I wish they'd got to 3D. And
He's going to click wondering what's coming next.
Yes. I've seen this video before. This was a realised of the art style. We wanted some sort of sideways scrolling platform game. It's very easy to just throw everything straight into 3D, but then you kind of look like everything else. So the guys were at work, were working on something that would look like a really nice cartoon style, obviously modelled in 3D, but viewed in 2D, so that it played roughly the same as the old games, because we thought that's the charm of it. Anyway, we liked it. Unfortunately, we didn't get enough backers to like it enough.
It turns out you need to be good at social media.
Yeah, we're not very good at that.
I have to say, we have since set up a Twitter account and a Facebook account, and there's an Oliver Twins Facebook account, and in fact Dizzy even has a Facebook account as well. In fact, I believe he's currently live streaming. Go Dizzy! Okay, who's doing this one, Andrew? You want to do this one?
You, because I haven't seen it before. But every now and then, no, I don't mind. I'm just thinking, I haven't seen this slide before, but I was there, so it's fine. But occasionally we get asked to go to events to talk about games in the old days and what it was like. So here's us giving a presentation on stage, and it's talking about Dizzy. And we were answering various questions, and we always bring along lots of goodies. In fact, we can't now because they're all here. They're all upstairs. So when you look upstairs, when we used to go and do talks, he'd go and get a few boxes worth of stuff, and sort of we'd have it on stage, and sometimes we'd have the excuse to pull boxes out.
Fancy World Dizzy.
Yeah, so you got all the discs and the notes and stuff in there. But we were actually on stage. Someone was asking some questions. I pulled out some sort of map and just threw it out and go, "Oh, Wonderland Dizzy." I don't remember seeing any boxes of Wonderland Dizzy. And it was literally, I was on stage going, I'm not sure we published this game. I'm not sure it ever came out. And it just brought up the question there and then about sort of the
what's in those boxes?
We've got lots of boxes. Philip's attic is just full of boxes. And when things ended at Codemasters, they ended rather abruptly. And there were games that were sort of written but hadn't come out because things just take a little bit of time in QA.
Especially ROMs.
Yeah. We used to lose summer holidays. My wife's back there, she'll tell you. Because we would launch games at Christmas, which meant you had to master in summer holidays. And so we generally would go on holiday in about sort of October, November, when it's getting cold generally everywhere. Because the heat of the summer, our deadlines used to be sort of end of August, the game must be completely mastered and stuff, and then it goes off to manufacture, into the chips, into the ROMs and stuff, and then you could be in the shops for late October. So things would take a long time, and that's why a lot of games were backed up that hadn't gone through. And there was a whole load of politics to do with Nintendo and Codemasters, and so sadly,
anyway,
some things just find themselves in boxes.
Realising that we had a finished map, and realising that this we only kind of really finished putting all the objects on the map right at the end. We draw the map right at the beginning, and then place the objects, pin them on when the game was finished. We thought, well, that would suggest the game's finished. Can't remember it. So I went into my loft and did a nice little tweet from my loft saying, I'm looking for something. And then eventually another tweet going, I found it. And what I actually found was a disk, which is says it's the final source code and source graphics and everything, and you can compile from that. Of course, I didn't have a computer that could read disks like that, and I didn't have the assembler, the compiler. But I spoke to Andrew Joseph, and he said that he knew somebody in Poland, Lucas Kerr, who could probably remaster the game from that. So who knew? He did a fantastic job. We did a Kickstarter for Wonderland Dizzy, and people were able to back the Kickstarter, and we in fact produced the game on cartridge. And in fact, you can play it at wonderlanddizzy.com, the original ROM, and you can in fact download the ROM from the site as well. And when it comes to fans, I mean, Lucas did that, and that was awesome. But then we came across this one time, just on Facebook, somebody doing some posts and hashtag Dizzy. And this guy, Piotr Pitt, as he's known, has been drawing lots of fan art, trying to capture the atmosphere and the flavour and the stories of Dizzy. Which any of you who have played Dizzy, anybody in the room play Dizzy? Also, yeah, look at these pictures, they're awesome, they really capture the atmosphere. And in fact, so we've been in touch with Pitt, and he's done lots of new work for us. Andrew, could you like to pass me a picture? This is a new piece of work that he's just done, which we think is absolutely awesome. He's also done the 30th anniversary logo of Dizzy. He's also done a 35th anniversary of the Spectrum logo for us, and all of this because he's a great guy, a really talented artist. I think he did your Team Yokefolk logo as well. So it's amazing what the fans can do, and we're really proud that people remember Dizzy so fondly.
That's that logo he did.
Oh yeah, that one.
Completely different style, but really nice.
He's an artist, talented. That means he can do different styles.
Okay.
So, here we are at the National Video Game Arcade. You probably recognise this since you are all seated here and you have just walked through that very door. Hopefully, you've all been upstairs and you've seen the new Dizzy room. There's a lot of stuff that was in my loft that is now in glass display cases. And we're really hoping you enjoy the exhibit up there and all the items. We've done some narrative on some of the things. We'll be up there obviously today and be chatting to people. We have my parents to thank for keeping the curtains. I have to say it's quite interesting that like when I walked in the room, it's like, oh wow, it feels like my bedroom.
It's alright. We know where that collecting, put everything in your loft gene comes from.
So there you go. Fantastic exhibit here for Dizzy. It's going to be here at least 6 months, at least until the end of the summer holidays. But I have to say, if people love it, I'm sure it will last a lot longer.
Yeah, okay.
So there you go. That's Dizzy. I hope you enjoyed that.
Okay, although there will be some more Dizzy in a short while. We'll take a break. But we've got a little bit of time. We've got about 10 minutes, I reckon.
Question and answers?
If people want to do a Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, there we go. That sounds like you have a question.
Yeah, is there anything that you desperately wanted to write and just never got the opportunity?
Well, it's funny you should say that because we still write games today.
We're doing quite a good one at the moment. You get some goodies at the back. But you all know what we're writing right now, do you? Who knows what we're working on right now? Well, I say writing, that's a bit of a loose term for not writing. Because we've got a very talented team of about 110 people who are very talented writing games. So put your hand up if you know what we are doing now. Not many people, about half the people.
We're working on a very big game called Sky Saga. Still in development, but it's a big online free-to-play PC game, and hopefully it'll be really popular and go to other platforms as well.
Yeah.
So we're very proud of that, and I have to say that sort of does epitomise all the things that we always wanted to write, all in one big game. So
Yeah, I
we
mean,
have a great publisher who's funding us to make the game that we always wanted to make. So.
yeah, I mean, it is a fantasy adventure world. How cool is that? It's all online, and in fact, because technology allows these days, it's UGC, which means that the players themselves, whilst they're playing, they can be creating for other players. And the game just will keep getting better and better into the future. So anyway, enough of a plug on that.
Speaking, no, it's a good question. I mean, the fact is, in the early days, when it's just yourselves and you're sort of working from home, you just write what you wanted to write. You were just limited by the computer and the memory and stuff like that. The problem is the computers is brilliant. The sort of Moore's law takes it and doubles it and doubles it and doubles it, but that generally means doubling the money and development time on everything as well.
Now we're just limited by 110 people's output.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a limitation, but you know, we're getting there. No, but it's awesome what computer games can do, but they are so expensive nowadays to make these games. Yeah, although having said that, it's really cool that iPhones exist and things that people can go and make the smaller games and they can still find success, so that's great.
Okay, I think that was a detailed answer to that question, more than you anticipated, I think. Any more questions? Hello.
What's your favourite game that's not your own?
Favourite game that's not my own? Oh, good.
Mine has to be Mario Kart, just because I think I've played every single version of it, and we play it with the family over all of those years, and I continue to sort of think that's just really, really nicely done. It's like they've had a formula and they've stuck to it, and it always did work, and it always continues to work. I mean, you can look at various other games like Zelda, and they're obviously nice big adventures and taking it different ways.
Zelda's pretty good.
But yeah, I have to say I'm probably a bit of a Nintendo fan. But then
during their Wii U years.
I think that's probably the only console I've never bought was the Wii U. I was like, we got one in work, and it was just like,
oh, you did buy that one.
Okay, I did buy it, but I bought it for work because we have a sort of canteen kitchen area where people can always play. At the moment, it's all VR things, which is hilarious in the canteen because you can go behind them and poke them. So I kind of experienced it, but I was like, oh, I'm going to get one of these for home, but it was just it's all leads and it's all bits and pieces. So sorry, but I think Nintendo have come back quite well with the Switch. Actually, I quite like that. So I'm a bit of a Nintendo fan, I think.
Yeah, me too. So I have to say that's the thing about us, we're twins. So it's like, can I go with what he said? I mean, the recent Zelda obviously is phenomenal. But I mean, one of the ones I always just like to call out is Pac-Man. Pac-Man is the game that got us hooked on games, and it was the first character game. We put too many hours into that game. Always hoping that we can kind of find some kind of flaw in it, or like, hey, maybe we can drop to the wall. Maybe if we go fast enough, we can. No.
But it's just something that we found really, really engaging and yet really, really simplistic. And there was just a magic there that you can have something so simplistic that keeps you going for hours. Although, to be perfectly honest, we were quite competitive. So I think it was a case of, you'll never be that score. So it became a bit challenging to beat each other. So probably wouldn't have had the appeal had it just been like just one of us just playing it, trying to beat your own score, because you're not getting very much feedback from Pac-Man. Just a number. But when you turn into a bit of a competition, it keeps you going for years.
Cool. Fantastic. Another question in front.
Yeah. What's both of you, in fact, did you both like the same one? What's your favourite computer of the ones you actually programmed yourselves?
Ones you programmed myself. I mean, the 664 Amstrad was a genius machine. I mean, it came out in 86. Yes, 86. I'm just trying to think. It might have been 85 actually. 85. Obviously, that's the one that we use as our sort of workhorse because we'd come from the BBC. Actually, I should have said BBC because BBC is freaking cool. The problem was it was difficult to sell games on BBC. So, BBC, I'm going to change my answer. BBC Micro was amazing. The fact that I had an inline assembler was very, very cool. The arcade games that Acorn Soft were slightly inspired by were pretty good as well. And then we went to the Amstrad 664 and then the 6128. 6128, a couple of years later, was a bit of a slimmer design, but fundamentally the same machine with a little bit more memory you couldn't really access.
Yeah, I mean, the BBC Micro, you only need to see something like Elite or Revs to go, my God, that was ahead of its time. Like, the games were ahead of their time, but the machine was ahead of its time. One that was behind its time, but I just thought was kind of neat and slick, was the original Nintendo machine. It was actually sort of 3 or 4 years later in technology terms, but they were so slick. I mean, those games was just so nicely written and worked. And it actually
you might see one.
Quite
You
well.
might see one in a little bit.
Yeah.
And actually, there's still. I mean, did people see the Dream World Pogie that we released a few months ago? December, we released one of our old unreleased games, Dream World Pogie. And you fire it up now, and it's so slick and it's just so polished. But I mean, half of that was our code, obviously. But the actual machine allowed us to do that, and that's on a machine that was designed in about '84. It's quite amazing.
Well, it was '84 tech, but I think they actually launched it a few years later. So it was slightly old tech for its time, but it did just work. It just worked very nicely. And you could just push cartridges into it.
And then they did quite a lot of it.
For those people who remember the cassette tapes, that was a blessing.
Yeah, so BBC, Amstrad. Sorry, Spectrum didn't make it on the list.
And then the PlayStation 1, I mean, that's the last machine, the last console I coded. And the PlayStation 1 was just suddenly a leap above everything else in technology. They've done quite well out of that as well.
Any more questions? Shall we wrap up? No?
Last one. Go on, it's my son. Just to embarrass him before he tries to embarrass me.
What's your favourite family game?
Oh, for goodness sake.
Fusion Frenzy! Fusion Frenzy was awesome. Does this actually work?
No, we just shake loud. I think mine has a... Oh, if you actually push it up against your lips. Okay, there's a bit of a joke because my son has grown up...
Battery school.
With his school friends quoting him for going, "It's a family game," because of the video that you saw of the Saturday show, where in squeaky voice, is it me that says it or is it him that says it? One of us says, "It's a family game," in a squeaky voice, and obviously he's had his dad growing up and he sees me in a different view, but all of his friends take the mickey out of him for having a dad that makes funny videos like that. So the answer being, what is a favourite family game? It's Sky Saga now, that's our favourite family game. Although I do believe back in the day, Dizzy was quite popular.
And on that bombshell,
Yeah, let's leave it at that.
Let's wrap it up. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll be around, and we're going to come back at 4:30 to do another presentation. Okay, thank you. Thank you.